I was hearing suggestions that the reason people are targeting Rishi Sunak, billionaire Rishi Sunak, and his wife is because people are being racist. A suggestion that if they were from America or Canada or somewhere where the people were white, we would behave differently. Today, some Boris bashers try to blame Boris for this so-called attack on Mr. Sunak, which is frankly ridiculous. Others saying this is all coming from the Labour Party. Rishi himself suggesting that this is some sort of smear campaign. Look, it's simple. In my eyes, Rishi Sunak is the architect of what I believe to be the worst budget I think I have ever had the misfortune to hear from a Conservative Chancellor in my lifetime, and I'm old. So Rishi, let me tell it to you straight in a letter. Dear Rishi, your spring statements seem to only benefit those who can afford heat pumps and solar panels. You appear to have no idea how to fill your car up at the pumps after giving those who can afford one a discount, which hasn't, in many cases, been passed on. So as you pretended to be like the rest of us, filling up your averagely priced car, which obviously wasn't yours because you're a billionaire and you aren't like the rest of us, you are calling on us, the British public, to make up for your economic mismanagement. There was, let me give you some of them, Eat Out to help out with COVID, which potentially caused a rise in cases and cost us, the taxpayer, an eye-watering £849 million after soaring way over budget. You failed to recoup over £30 billion that was fraudulently distributed by your government during the pandemic, which, if you only did this one thing, none of us would be paying the national insurance hike. You failed to declare your interest in Infosys, a company that your wife has a share in, which has earned almost £500 million. That's nearly £500 million from the public sector contracts, which include earning £488,000 from the Cabinet Office, £636,000 from the Home Office, and £321,000 for Railtrack. And it's only just now pulling out of trading with Russia after pressure, despite your government encouraging companies to do so over a month ago. But now it turns out that your wife has chosen to maintain her non-domicile status whilst actually living here next door to the Prime Minister at number 11 Downing Street, and because of this, doesn't have to pay tax on money earned outside of the UK. All perfectly within the realms of the law, I might add. But she has chosen to be non-domicile, thereby shielding a large portion of your family's wealth from the UK tax system, the system that you, as Chancellor, are in charge of. So basically, choosing, in my eyes, to avoid tax. Let me cast your mind back to Jimmy Carr and people like Gary Barlow. They were castigated for using perfectly legal loopholes to avoid paying tax. This government tried to recoup money from those people and companies who they believed were not adhering to the spirit of the law. So they weren't actually breaking the law, but they were legally swerving paying tax, a bit like your wife. This government tried to pursue them to do the right thing. Would you say they were also smeared? So whilst we all see an increase in tax to pay for your woeful mismanagement of the economy, your wife is legally avoiding paying some 38% of tax, which would now be just over 39% because of your policies, whilst living next door to the Prime Minister, thereby rubbing salt into the wounds. You are making the decisions that impact the rest of us, whilst your family are insulated from the effect of your very own policies. Can you see how that looks? Dishy Rishi, you've lost your appeal. You can dish it out, but it doesn't appear that you can take it. That's why the British public are rightfully furious. Yours sincerely, Nana Akua. So for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is media personality and writer Christine Hamilton and broadcaster and journalist Petri Hoskin. Before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. Now, each Friday at 5, we focus on a particular guest or subject matter, and today we'll be looking at the government's energy strategy. Just 24 hours after the announcement, Extinction Rebellion activists have caused huge disruption in central London, calling on the government to end the use of fossil fuel. But there's an argument that the strategy is looking at cleaner alternatives with plans for up to 8 new nuclear reactors and an increase in wind, hydrogen and solar production. We'll discuss that with a panel of energy experts. The Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should people with non-dom status have to pay tax in the UK on all earnings? Rishi Sunak says his wife is being smeared and has done nothing wrong in a row over her non-dom tax status. The benefit is granted to a UK resident who declares their permanent home outside the UK, and it means that they don't have to pay UK tax on foreign income, only on earnings that they make in this country. So I'm asking, should people with non-dom status have to pay tax in the UK on all earnings? And would you want to know how many calories are in your favourite meals when you're eating out at a restaurant? From this week, businesses in England with over 250 employees must display calorie information on their menus. I wonder how they came up with that number, 250 employees. The law was brought in to help reduce the estimated £1.6 billion spent by the NHS on fighting obesity each year. We'll discuss that with the nutritionist Monica Price. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's do this. Let's get started. Welcome again to my panel, media personality and writer Christine Hamilton, and broadcaster and journalist Petri Oskan. So welcome. Thank you very much for joining me both. And Petri, thank you very much. First time us working together on the same show, so it's lovely.
Well, it's not the first time we've worked together on the same show.
That's true.
But it is for a while.
Yes. I used to be Petri's, what do you call it, like work experience.
Yeah.
I was working experience, I was. And Christine Hamilton's runner. You're not that old. Well, I lied about my age. I just pretended I was younger than I was.
Did you?
I did, yes. No, I didn't. I just looked slightly younger at the time. So, Petri, what do you think? Rishi Sunak, is this a sort of what he's calling, or a lot of people are calling an attack on him? Is it fair or unfair?
Look, first point I want to address is that any idea this hasn't come from an enemy, I think, is false. This is definitely something that has been timed. Should we put it like that? And it wouldn't surprise me, because Boris Johnson has been, I think, feared of the popularity of the erstwhile popularity of Mr. Rishi Sunak, that it may have come. Look, this is politics, right? Dear, it's politics. So we all know they play games. We all know that this stuff comes out. Is his wife fair game? If he benefits in any way from her financial status, yes. If he can say that not a penny of her money is ever used for anything to support the children and to support him, then maybe she doesn't have any. We don't have any right to know. But in the instance that she is allegedly richer than the Queen, yes. I especially think, as you were saying, Nana, that if you're making the policies, it's like Partygate. Don't party, but we're going to party. It's the same sort of thing. It's optics.
Yes, it's true. But for me, looking at Partygate, that wasn't such a big issue because at the end...
it's similar in terms of saying one thing and living another way.
And a lot of them appear to do that. But on this case, I'm with you, Petri. I don't think that's... For me, I don't believe how you can separate your income in that way, specifically from your wife.
When you're married,
it's just not true, is it? And if anything happens to you, then there must be some sort of agreement where you will be the person who then will be... It will get the benefits. Christine, what do you think?
Well, if you go into public life, life is public. And rule number one is don't do anything if you don't want it to appear on the front page of the Sun or the Mail or whatever. Don't do it. And is his wife fair game? I'm afraid I think she is, largely because he is the Chancellor. You listed all the things he's imposed on the rest of us. You know, I mean, taxes are for little people. They're not for billionaires. And the Sunaks are just proving that. I mean, poor Rishi. Having been not poor, rich Rishi, having gone from being dishy Rishi and the sort of darling, etc., handing out money to everyone, he's now, frankly, exceedingly fishy Rishi. And it is all about perception. She has done nothing wrong. No, she has evaded tax, which is OK. She has avoided tax, which is OK. She has not evaded tax, and the difference is the width of the wall in Pentonville Prison, you know. So she's not done anything illegal, but it's all in the perception, and it simply doesn't fit well. I don't like the politics of envy, and it doesn't do anybody any good. We need rich people in this country. I mean, the top 1%...
If they're paying tax.
Yes, the top...
If they're paying tax. If they're not, then we don't need them at all.
No,
we don't need
but
her there. She's
the
not
top 1% of earners are paying 27% of the tax take. Now, if we lose them, that tax has to come from other people. So we should be more like Switzerland and Singapore and have a vibrant enterprise economy where people want to come here because the tax take is low. I mean, Margaret Thatcher reduced the tax take from, get my figure right, 98 down to 40%. And what happened? The total tax take went shooting up.
But he's doing
kept more of their money.
He's doing the exact opposite, isn't he? And so it doesn't even make any sense, right? No. I mean, you know, the simple basic premise in terms of economics is that you want more money flowing in the economy.
Yeah, the higher tax goes, the more people find ways of not paying it. And it's as simple as that. And when you look at this non-dom status, it is almost entirely chosen, because it is a choice,
yes, it is a choice.
By the very, very rich. You don't get many people who are on lower incomes asking for non-dom status. What does that tell you?
I think one thing which I think people should be aware of, to be fair to Mrs. Sunak, it's not that she's not paying any tax on that income, it's just that she's paying it in India.
And we don't know that for sure.
Well, I think one has to assume that the Indian tax authorities
we don't know what
are taking.
Well, if she is, she is. But I know when my parents lived in America, they had to pay tax in the UK and in America.
Yes, so, both places.
So you know, and these are middle in comparison in terms of income. They're nothing like the earnings of Mrs. Sunak. But if you just tuned in, welcome on board. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online, and on digital radio. Still to come, the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should people with non-dom status have to pay tax in the UK on all their earnings? The benefit means a UK resident who declares their permanent home outside the UK doesn't have to pay UK tax on foreign income. Rishi Sunak's wife, Akshata Murthy, has come under criticism for having the tax system. So I'm asking, should people with non-dom status have to pay tax in the UK on all earnings? Send me your thoughts, email gbviews@gbnews.uk and tell me what you think. You can also tweet me at GBNews. There is a poll up right now asking that very question. Should people with non-dom status pay tax in the UK on all earnings? Cast that vote now, but first, your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 4:32. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. The UK is sending a further £100 million worth of high-grade military equipment to Ukraine's armed forces. The Prime Minister says the weapons will include anti-aircraft and anti-tank missiles. The announcement follows a Russian rocket attack which killed at least 50 people, including 5 children in eastern Ukraine. More than 100 others were injured when a railway station in the city of Kramatorsk was targeted. 2 missiles struck as people were trying to evacuate the area. One, labelled for the children on it. The Kremlin has denied any involvement in the attack. Boris Johnson says evidence of war crimes are mounting and Ukraine's allies are doing more to help the country.
Today I can announce that the UK will send a further £100 million worth of high-grade military equipment to Ukraine's armed forces, including more Starstreak anti-aircraft missiles, which fly at 3 times the speed of sound, another 800 anti-tank missiles, and precision munitions capable of lingering in the sky until directed to their target. The Europe we knew just 6 weeks ago no longer exists. Putin's invasion strikes at the very foundations of the security of our continent.
The man who killed Sabina Nessa has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 36 years after pleading guilty to her murder. Kochi Salamaj from Eastbourne killed the school teacher in a park in southeast London last September as she walked to meet up with friends. 3-time Wimbledon champion Boris Becker has been found guilty of 4 charges under the Insolvency Act at Southwark Crown Court. The charges relating to his 2017 bankruptcy included the removal of property, 2 counts of failing to disclose estate and concealing debt. He's been bailed ahead of sentencing later this month. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. It's back to Nana Akua after this break.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
It's 36 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua and I'm still with my superstar panel, media personality and writer Christine Hamilton and broadcaster and journalist Petri Hoskin. Now, before the break, we were discussing Rishi Sunak's dismissing scrutiny of his wife as non-dom status as unpleasant smears, and how, in my view, he doesn't understand why people are so frustrated with him. So let's see what you've been saying. Paddy says, blimey, that was some letter. Rishi's ears must be burning and his eyes watering. Philip says, how much rubbish can you spout in one go? She has not broken the law. No, I know she hasn't broken the law. But thank you for that. Gillian says, Nana, I totally agree with you. I'm furious and I think Rishi should resign. Yeah, we should do. Let's call for him to resign. I agree with you. Why not? Listen, keep your thoughts coming at GB News. I'd love to hear what you think on those. But, of course, it's time for our Great British Debate, so I thought we'd extend it and ask you this question. Should people with non-dom status have to pay tax in the UK on all earnings? Rishi Sunak's wife, Akshata Murthy, has come under fire for claiming non-dom status, which means she doesn't have to pay tax in the UK on her overseas earnings. But the perfectly legal status is well used by people here in the UK. A study by the LSE, or London School of Economics, and the University of Warwick found that more than 2/5 of people who earned £5 million or more in 2018 had claimed this status at some point since 1997. So I'm asking, should people with non-dom status have to pay tax in the UK on all earnings? I'm joined now by UK immigration lawyer Harjat Singh. I knew I was going to get it wrong. I got the first bit right. Harjat Singh Bangle.
Bangle.
Oh, like a bracelet.
Yeah, you got
should
the
tell me it was
easiest
like
bit wrong.
a bracelet. Yeah, it's typical, isn't it? Well, it doesn't look like
everything
it.
else right.
I know, exactly. So can you just explain what non-dom status is briefly, so we can get.
Yeah, it means that you have to apply for a special status.
Right.
You can get it because you're not born here, or you're not resident here, or you're not you're not domiciled effectively here, or you're not a national of this country, or at the age of 16 you might be British and you think, I'm going to leave this country and live in another country, so I want non-dom status. It requires you to pay tax on your UK earnings, but not on any earnings that you get from abroad. So effectively, that's what it is.
So even if you've got a business or something abroad that pays you into what if a business pays you into a UK bank account?
Oh, then you have to pay, then you have to pay.
So
but you can keep it offshore in different accounts in different countries, and then you won't have to pay.
So if it's offshore, say in somewhere where you can have an offshore account, you can then spend it in the UK without paying tax?
Yeah, you can spend it wherever you want. It's your money. You can spend it.
But without paying tax.
Pretty much, in effect, you are the owner of that money and you can spend it without declaring.
So if you earn money in another country, so say, for example, from her company, her share in Infosys, and she earns money there, but then it goes into an offshore account, she can then spend it in the UK, but it hasn't been taxed.
Just like you can spend money in my, say, X bank account in the UK, I can spend it in America without the American government asking, where's that come from?
I see. Yeah. So this non-dom status is definitely a way of avoiding paying tax.
It's a way to minimise your tax bill. Every person who avoids tax, the defence is, well, I've always paid my taxes. Every non-dom who's been accused of tax avoiding. However, they've also tried every trick in the book to minimise that tax bill. So where, in effect, if she wasn't non-dom, she would be paying an extra X amount, let's say an extra 2 million a year, just, for sake. And now she doesn't have to pay that, or she's, in effect, minimised her bill and doesn't have to pay that.
See, now, I know this was brought in by, was it King George or someone?
About 200 years ago,
About 200 years ago. Yeah. And the idea was to help people avoid paying tax. I mean,
during war times.
That was the whole initiative of it, so that was the purpose of it. If I heard that in 2017 there was something here that limited the amount of time you could then claim this status. Is that correct? And if so, how long?
That's right. It's about 15 years.
Right.
So if you...
Did they backdate it, though? So for her, they could say, well, you arrived... It starts from 2017.
No. So what happens, it's not backdated in effect, but they can... It's now... So if you're 15 years, if you spend more than that here, then your status will almost be rescinded, or you can apply... They can say, right, you're not a non-dom anymore.
But can you reapply?
You can reapply.
And start again?
You can reapply and start again, as long as it's assessed that you're not actually domiciled here. So they look at your ties. Are your kids here? Do you have property here? Are you living your daily life here? How much time you're spending here?
Well, why are they not looking at that now, then? Because if you look at it, they've got houses in Yorkshire, they've got money, they've got a house in central London, she lives next door to the Prime Minister, her kids go to school in this country. How can you claim non-dom status if you are literally living in this country?
Someone should have picked this up when Rishi first became Chancellor, first became prominent, or started developing his brand. So there's a clear problem here that someone didn't pick this up as a conflict. Now, I think the question for Rishi is he benefiting from that? Now, in a married life, of course you are. Of course you benefit from that. It's hard. And people say, well, you should split everything, not if everything's split. It's hard enough to split a bar of soap in a married life, let alone anything else.
Oh, so, I'd split it.
Yeah, I'm sure we shower gel all the way. Some of us still use soap. But it's so for that, it's hard to split things. What can you split? So obviously, somewhere down the line, it's going to be assumed that Rishi is benefiting from that. And therefore, why have they let themselves into this mess? This doesn't show good judgment. If she's a billionaire and all she has to do is pay an extra £2 million tax a year to avoid this mess and avoid people scrutinising her husband, who has a chance to be Prime Minister and has aspirations of being Prime Minister, why doesn't she do that? Surely the fact that they're trying to save that tells you a lot about these people, that they put their private wealth as a priority over everything else. And if that's the case, is that really the type of people that we want in charge or running any government departments? Whereas this week, all our national insurances have gone up. And for people like us who are on PAYE, and we have to
no
pay
way
tax,
out,
we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice to be non-dom. My dad was born in India, but I live here. I don't claim to be a non-dom. My wife came over here at the age of 6 from India. She can claim to be a non-dom, and we can run tax avoidance schemes through it. We don't choose to do that. We live here, lived here my whole life, been born and bred in Romford. So, I see myself as British. Now, surely Rishi and his family should do the same, and not just for tax purposes say, well, actually, I'm Indian, I'm planning to leave this country. You're married to a Chancellor who wants to be Prime Minister. Your children are in education here. You have 3 houses here. I don't think that.
I think it's more than that.
Well, I think that's the signs of someone who plans on staying around.
Well, listen, I think you're right there. But thank you so much, Harjot Singh Bangal.
Got it in the end.
Immigration lawyer. Lovely to talk to you.
You too.
Right, lovely, right. So stay with us. Of course, this is GBNews. Let's see what my panel make of that. I've got media personality and writer Christine Hamilton and journalist and broadcaster Petri Hoskin. So, Christine, your views then, non-dom status.
First of all, I find it extraordinary, and you were referring earlier to has this all been pushed out from Number 10, because this was in the public domain, and Rishi apparently declared it right at the beginning, but it was in the public domain over a year ago.
Well, no, he didn't declare the interest initially in the minister's interests for his... he didn't declare that.
He did not, but it's been in the public domain, that august organ, private eye. So it has been there, so one wonders why it hasn't been plastered all over the place. I'm not sure, you know, that I just think they didn't see this coming. I'm not sure they haven't had a media-savvy person advising them. I find it difficult to believe, and I'm not here to defend them, that they actually sat down and said, we can get away with this as long as nobody knows. Well, I just think they didn't see this car crash coming. And
I mean,
so bad.
But how did they not see this coming? I mean, honestly, it's absolutely it's ridiculous for a chancellor. And as you said, Nana, that they were talking about, you know, Jimmy Carr and all. They were
awful, weren't they? They were awful to them.
Absolutely dragged through the muck. And actually, they had done a similar thing. I mean, the idea that you're non-domiciled if you live here for 15 years makes no sense to me. I remember I worked for the British Forces Broadcasting many moons ago, and I was paid because I lived in Germany. So I wasn't. I had no choice, by the way, on this. But I was only about 18. But
it's only a few years ago.
It was only about 5 years ago. But I was paid tax-free, but I wasn't allowed to be in the UK for more than 91 days. And so that would make sense. If you're non-domiciled, fine. But you have a limit on that's 3 months a year you're allowed in the UK. The rest of the time, go and live in the country that you claim is your priority home.
Nobody expects anybody to be double taxed. Of course, nobody should pay tax on their income in, for example, India and...
Well, normal people do.
Not on the same money.
Well, no, normal. I think they do, though, don't they? Normal people do. Like my dad, when he worked in America, he had to pay American tax, and then he had to pay tax in the UK as well.
But a lot of countries have treaties so that doesn't happen. But she apparently says, I can't now remember the phrase, but it's where she wants to go to die.
Yes, it's a resting place. It's your final resting place.
Right.
If you say that, then
parents get older. But it just looks appalling.
It's the optics.
It's the optics.
Shocking.
And, you know, it goes back to what I said, you know, taxes for little people, not for rich people like chancellors of the Exchequer.
Well, it does seem to be that way, and it seems to be those who are using the law to their advantage in this way. And, you know, look, I don't know, would we all do it? Would we all do it? I don't know whether I would. Especially if I was the Chancellor. If I was the Chancellor, I'd look at that and think, perhaps I should be paying tax.
You know what, while we're talking about this, let's address as well those companies who make all their money in the UK and non-domicile their offices.
Well, they were castigated as well. Well, the government were going to go for them as well, weren't they, around about the same time? No, they didn't. But the government wanted them to give the money in the spirit of the law, which is what they said.
Well, like MPs did. Do you remember that whole the expenses fiasco? Oh, they didn't break the law, but they didn't follow the spirit of the law. Look, these companies, there should be, in my view anyway, is a sales tax in this country. You sell a cup of coffee, you pay tax on that. And that's as simple as that, because you've got massive companies getting away without paying any tax or a tiny, minuscule amount of tax in this country. So it's not just the rich, it's the rich companies too.
But it's the balance, isn't it? We want to attract rich people here because, you know, they pay their taxes, they help...
If they pay their tax.
If they pay their tax.
If they don't pay their taxes.
But we don't want to frighten them off. It's a balancing act.
It's the same with companies. We don't want companies here if they're not going to pay their tax.
Well, there's no point, and we're not benefiting. But today I'm asking, should people with non-dom status have to pay tax in the UK on all their earnings? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Lamy says, we should remember that there are lots of foreign people in this country who come here for a short period of time without the intention to live here for life. Yes, that's fair enough. But if you live here for many, many years and all your kids go to school and you buy homes here and then you say that you don't live here, then I'm afraid you pay tax. Graham says, Mrs Sunak should not be vilified for complying with the law. Oh, well, I mean, we're not vilifying her. She's complying with the law, but her husband is the Chancellor.
She's perfectly entitled to tax bill as much as she can. We all are.
Yeah, she's perfectly entitled to, but she should be warned that if she does it this way, she might get flack. Mike says, as a non-domiciled person, you should only be allowed to pay to stay 6 months, then leave with no return for 5 months. That's only fair if you do not wish to have British status. Yeah, there should be some sort of
wasn't
some sort of, you have to stay here for a certain period of time. If you go back and forth, then we can negotiate, but not if you just live here all the time. And no. John says, if they live in this country and enjoy all that it offers, then yes, they should pay some tax on overseas earnings. Layla says, isn't Rishi's wife entitled to have financial independence from her husband?
Yes.
Make her own decisions?
Yes.
Or are we going backwards on women's rights? What do you think? That's a good, nice point.
She's entirely entitled to be independent. Of course she is, but as I said, it goes back to what I was saying. If you're in public life, life is public. Nobody's saying she's done anything illegal. She's done nothing illegal. She's just done something...
She's perfectly entitled, but then we're perfectly entitled to question it and criticise it on the basis that if you say you don't live here and you live here... I mean, it might be the law that you can say you don't. I mean, I think she at the moment will pay £30,000 a year.
Yes, to keep the non-dom status. So that's
and then after a while it goes up to 60.
That's like a fee.
Yeah. But after 15 years, she, presumably will leave the country.
Well, she might not, though, and I think you can renew it, though. That's the thing. So you can renew it.
What she said is not that she doesn't live here. She hasn't said, I am a non-dom. She's ticked a box to say, I am a non-dom for tax purposes.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the box. That is the box.
And it's a choice.
In everybody's
so she's made it a choice.
It's a choice.
It is a choice. And not that we wouldn't all make it, but if I were married to the Chancellor, I would have to, who is changing, making the tax laws more difficult for all of us in terms of the amount we're paying tax, then I think that I would...
Couldn't have come at a worse moment for Rishi, which comes back to, is number 10 behind all this?
Yeah.
No, but you see, I don't think... even if they were, it doesn't make any difference. The fact that she's claiming that status, it's been highlighted, and actually we should have known about it sooner. And then he did not disclose the fact that she had that 1% share in that company.
To say that he was like Will Smith. Do you remember that line?
Not really.
I'm like Will Smith protecting my...
No, nothing like Will Smith at all. No.
I'm afraid the Chancellor's wife is fair. It's like Caesar's wife has to be above suspicion. The Chancellor's wife has to be the same.
But sorry, fair game, Rishi. Now, there's a poll up today on Twitter throughout the show asking, should people with non-domiciled status pay UK tax on their income? Currently, 47% of you say yes, whilst 53% of you say no, they shouldn't. Well, the poll is staying up, but that may change throughout the show. Keep them coming. It might end up like a Brexit vote. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua on GBNews, on TV and on digital radio. Still to come. All restaurants and cafes with more than 250 employees will now have to display their calories in their products on the menu. But would you want to know what you are eating, what calories are in there? I mean, this is all part of plans to tackle obesity. We're going to discuss that next in a moment.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Good afternoon. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? It's 53 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And I'm still with my panel, media personality and writer Christine Hamilton and broadcaster and journalist Petri Hoskin. Right, so in an exclusive interview with GB News, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson says that we need to get hold of our obesity problem here in the UK. He's been speaking about this issue just days after a law was passed, making it compulsory for food outlets with more than 250 employees, which I don't know why they came up with that number, to include calories on their menus. Now, talking to the Conservative MPs Esther McVey and Philip Davis, Boris Johnson explained why obesity is on his radar.
You know how much fatter we are post-COVID. I think I saw a figure the other day. This is all, I'm giving you this exclusively, okay? I think there's 36% more obesity. I think can that possibly be right? It's huge. There's been a huge increase in obesity as a result of, or 36% of people are fatter than they were. Maybe that's probably a more accurate way of expressing the statistic. And we were already, before the thing began, Philip, we were already the fattest nation in Europe, with the possible exception of the Maltese. And in the end, that is a massive charge on the taxpayer.
So can I look at this?
And so you and I, Philip, always defend the taxpayer, and the taxpayer is coughing up huge quantities for the consequences of that obesity. And I'm no advertisement for willpower, but we need to recognise.
Can I just go back to that point you just said?
The effects of obesity on our tax.
And of course, you can watch that full exclusive interview with the Prime Minister Boris Johnson on the Saturday selection tomorrow at 10 o'clock right here on GB News. So now I'm joined in the studio by nutritionist Monica Price. Monica, is this a good move to help with people and obesity? And I love your hair, Monica.
Oh, thank you so much.
I told Monica I'm going to get a wig just like that.
Are we going to swap?
I'll go blonde as well. But do you think that this is a good move?
Well, it's always, the way I see it, it's just another effort to try and almost put us into a nanny state. You know, telling us when we go out to eat now, we have to watch our calories. When people go out to eat, even as a nutritionist myself, you go out to enjoy the actual fundamental elements of just enjoying yourself with friends and eating good food. The reason why he's done it is because the obesity is on the increase. So I get that. But what we're doing here, I feel, is that we're fighting fire with fire. What we need to do is just take a step back and educate. That's what we need to do. We need to bring back education into our schooling system. You know, we need to make sure that people have an understanding about calories, because often when you just put calories on a menu, for example, you're missing out on the nutritional value of that food, for example. So, you know, this is it's opened up a whole sort of furore. And I mean, lots of the big organisations have been doing it already, and in America they've been doing it for years. Is it going to have the kind of effect that I think our Prime Minister wants it to have? I don't think it will, Nana, to be honest.
It seems to me, I mean, it seems to be a bit of a nonsense, really, and a waste of energy and time.
And money.
I probably want to set fire to that. It's telling me I'm out to enjoy myself, and you're telling me how fat I'm going to become from eating this thing. Exactly. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous.
It is, and you just feel that, again, it's just this kind of, it's an instant kind of reaction to try and solve a problem that we know we have, and I appreciate, because the obesity is on the increase, and I appreciate we have to do something. But again, I just don't feel, and there's no real studies to suggest that this is going to make a big difference. I think if you're the sort of person that's watching your weight anyway, when you go out to have dinner, you'll automatically kind of go through that menu and go on to, you know, and choose things that you really, really want to eat. You're not actually going to sit there and think and troll through and think, oh, actually, this is 100 calories, this is 1,000 calories. I just feel, again, that we're going about this the wrong way. We need to think about, you know, as I say, educating our children, bring back home ec in schools. I loved home economics.
Yeah,
you have an understanding then.
Probably wouldn't even be able to switch on the gas.
That's right.
The oven anymore, because of
health and safety.
Health and safety, something ridiculous like that. Let me ask my panel, Petri Hoskin and also Christine Hamilton, would you be put off by eating something in a restaurant if it said that it was 2,000 calories or...?
I'm with Monica on this. I think that it is ridiculous, and also pot and kettle, Boris. I mean, seriously, if running must put the weight on, because all we see him do is run, and yet I don't see a slimmer man.
Do you think he just runs for the bit when the camera's on him? And
Yeah,
just
maybe.
Run to the chippy.
Run straight to the car. But look, that's really fattest of me, and I'm sorry, but it's not. It's counterproductive in the way that it is nagging, and people don't like being nagged at. And also other policies, like selling off school playing fields, for example,
yes.
Many years ago, not encouraging inner-city children to get involved with sport, not making sport appealing and interesting. Like, even if we don't want to play hockey anymore, maybe we want to do some rock climbing or something interesting. You know, it just seems to me that and councils charging for young people to go and play football on these council-owned football pitches, that doesn't work.
What do you think then? If what would be useful? Okay, you talked about home economics, but what can restaurants or places like that do then to potentially help people understand the gravity of what they're about to shove down their throat?
I think the thing is, because they've chosen this 250 figure, that's the thing. You know, I don't know how that sort of came about. But there's so many of us eat in small independent restaurants, which aren't going to become any part of this policy. And the other thing that we're hearing now is, of course, there's people in the UK with eating disorders. And, you know, there's about 1.25 million people in the UK with an eating disorder. So anorexia, bulimia and binge eating. So these are, this is a mental health illness. So, you know, by having somebody like that, for instance, go in and have a look at a menu and seeing all the calories on a menu, I don't think none of this is going to be good because mental health of our young is already very fragile. So I just think we could do something else a lot better.
We could do something else a lot better. Monica, it's been fun talking to you. Thank you very much. That's Monica Price. She's a nutritionist. And I will quickly come to you, Christine, for like a 2-second.
2 seconds.
What do you think of that?
I don't think the government has got any business sticking its nose into our dinner plates. I think it's crazy. I know about calories because I take note of calories, but it isn't two things. It isn't what you put out in a run. Boris is wasting his time running if he doesn't. It's what you put in that actually counts, not what you put out. I think it's a nonsense. I've forgotten what the second point was. I know what it was. Boris said that obese people cost us more. They actually don't, because they tend to die earlier.
By smoking.
The way she's ended
smokers.
Is it?
How could I forget that?
Well, exactly. So what is your view on that? Do you think that having calories on a restaurant, on a menu, would help you? Get in touch. You can email us at GBViews, or tweet us out even at GBViews, or email gbviews@GBNews. That email address just doesn't get easier to say. Well, let's have a quick look at what people have been saying on this. We'll see. They've sent us their emails. For the Great British Debate this hour, we've been talking about lots of things, but we've been also asking, should people with non-dom status have to pay tax in the UK on their earnings? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Shade says, why should tax accrued on Indian earnings in India be paid to the UK exchequer rather than the Indian exchequer? That seems rather unfair. Well, actually, it would be to both, because that's what most people do who don't claim that status, depending on which country you go to. William says, it is terrible and doesn't really make sense at all when Rishi's responsible for raising taxes. And thank you for that one. Chris says she is an Indian citizen paying tax on profits of Indian businesses in India. Yes, we know that. But if you went to America, even as a British citizen, and then you worked in America, you'd be taxed in America on their earnings and in the UK. See, that's the difference. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. More to come in the next hour. So it's just gone 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 5. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. The UK is sending a further £100 million worth of high-grade military equipment to Ukraine's armed forces. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, says the weapons will include anti-aircraft and anti-tank missiles. The announcement follows a Russian rocket attack which killed at least 50 people, including 5 children, in eastern Ukraine. More than 100 others were injured when a railway station in the city of Kramatorsk was targeted. 2 missiles struck as people were trying to evacuate the area. One had the words "for the children" painted on it. The Kremlin denies any involvement in the attack. Boris Johnson says evidence of war crimes are mounting and Ukraine's allies are doing more to help the country.
Today I can announce that the UK will send a further £100 million worth of high-grade military equipment to Ukraine's armed forces, including more Starstreak anti-aircraft missiles, which fly at 3 times the speed of sound, another 800 anti-tank missiles, and precision munitions capable of lingering in the sky until directed to their target. The Europe we knew just 6 weeks ago no longer exists. Putin's invasion strikes at the very foundations of the security of our continent.
The man who killed Sabina Nessa has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 36 years. Kochi Salamanj from Eastbourne, who pleaded guilty to the murder, attacked the school teacher in a park in south-east London last September. The judge said it was cowardly for Salamanj to refuse to attend his sentencing, but said he had no power to force him. Senior investigating officer DCI Neil John said it was vital to catch him before he could attack another victim.
I've described him previously as an evil coward. I maintain that. As a human being, I'm appalled by the level of violence that he inflicted on Sabina. And I think as a police officer, I'm relieved that the team have been able to track, trace, apprehend and prosecute him in a timely manner.
Israel's Prime Minister says the Palestinian gunman who attacked a bar in Tel Aviv had accomplices. At least 3 people were killed and several others injured when the attacker opened fire in a pub in a crowded area. He was later shot dead by Israeli security forces. It's the latest in a string of deadly attacks in the country, which have killed at least 13 people over the past 2 weeks. 3-time Wimbledon champion Boris Becker has been found guilty of 4 charges under the Insolvency Act at Southwark Crown Court. The charges relating to his 2017 bankruptcy included the removal of property, 2 counts of failing to disclose estate and concealing debt. He was acquitted of a further 20 counts. He's been bailed ahead of sentencing later this month. The Queen has pulled out of the annual Royal Maundy Church service. It's the first time Her Majesty, who's been experiencing mobility issues, will miss the event. Prince Charles and Camilla will attend the service at St George's Chapel in Windsor Castle next Thursday. London's Tower Bridge has reopened after a protest by Extinction Rebellion activists forced its closure for several hours this morning. At least 2 people were arrested after demonstrators suspended themselves from the bridge using cords. They also unfurled a banner that read, "End fossil fuels now." Officers cleared the protesters just before midday. Airports and airlines have been criticised by the Civil Aviation Authority for failing to recruit enough staff to meet the recent demand for passenger travel. The body's chief executive, Richard Moriarty, has condemned disruption faced by passengers trying to get away over the Easter holidays. He says late notice cancellations and excessive delays are distressing for customers and have the potential to impact confidence levels across the industry. Today, Manchester Airport has asked passengers to prepare for long queues and arrive 3 hours before their flight. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now, it's back to Nana.
So, good afternoon. 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's media personality and writer Christine Hamilton and broadcaster and journalist Petri Hoskin. And still to come, in a few moments, I'll discuss the government's plans to future-proof the UK's energy system. Just 24 hours after the announcement, Extinction Rebellion activists have caused huge disruption in central London, calling on the government to end the use of fossil fuels. We'll discuss that and the energy strategy in a few moments. The Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should airlines pay more compensation for cancelled flights? As the Easter break gets into full swing, airports across the UK are expected to have their busiest weekend since the start of the pandemic. But it seems like they aren't ready to return to normal. And there's been chaos at airports in Manchester and Birmingham, with Manchester Airports Group Chief Executive warning passengers that waiting times of up to 90 minutes at security, and these could persist for months. There's also been more than 100 flights cancelled today alone. And of course, if you try to get on a train across the bank holiday weekend, good luck with that. There'll be engineering works. So I'm asking, should airlines pay more compensation for cancelled flights? Let me know what you think on everything we're discussing by emailing gbviews at gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. So let's start this hour with Friday Focus. And this week we take a look into the government's much anticipated new energy strategy. It includes an emphasis on nuclear, with a rapid extension of small modular reactors and a target to generate 50 gigawatts of power from offshore wind by 2030. During a visit to Hinkley Point yesterday, the Prime Minister said that the government's new energy strategy is about tackling some of the mistakes of the past.
It's a massive strategy for delivering 50 gigawatts, that's almost half the total electricity capacity of this country, from offshore wind by 2030, totally reviving the nuclear industry, which I'm afraid has been more or less moribund in this country. This is the home of nuclear energy. We first split the atom in the UK. We had the first civilian nuclear power plant. We're bringing nuclear home with one nuclear plant and one nuclear reactor every year for 8 years rather than one a decade. What we're also doing is making sure that we take a sensible, pragmatic view about hydrocarbons. We have domestic hydrocarbons. For the interim, we've got to make sure that we, for the interim period as we transition to net zero, we've got to make sure that we use them sensibly as well, and license stuff in the North Sea, rather than importing higher carbon fossil fuels from abroad, from Russia, amongst other places.
So Prime Minister Boris Johnson speaking about the energy strategy, but the strategies face criticism for doing little to help people with rocketing energy bills in the short term. So I'm joined in the studio by Angela Knight, the former Chief Executive of Energy UK. Angela, thank you very much for joining us. So let's start with what was your reaction to the Prime Minister's new energy strategy?
Well, I thought that actually setting out exactly what needed to be done over the next 10, 15, 20 years is the right thing to do, because there has not been a clear programme before of how we actually do that difficult piece of shutting down the rest, or just about the rest, of our gas generators and our coal, and making a secure energy supply for the country. All the focus is on, let's build the new environmental projects, whatever they may be, mostly offshore wind, some onshore wind, some solar, without properly recognising that the wind only blows for part of the time, even offshore, and that when it's not blowing, you need to have something else, unless we're all prepared to say, we'll have the lights turned off. I mean, maybe Extinction Rebellion, or whatever they call themselves, is prepared to say, no, I'll go and sit in the cold for the next 3 weeks. But the reality is that for us as living in this country, and for industry, a continuous, reliable supply of energy is required. And if we are really going to decarbonise or reduce dramatically even further the amount of hydrocarbon we use to generate our electricity, then we've got to say what gets put in its place. And that is the nuclear, which is the backup, and some more wind. So I think it's a good combination.
So they're talking about some small nuclear reactors.
Well, that I believe is the type of nuclear plant that what you need to focus on, because the big nuclear plants, like the one that's being built at Hinkley, it's about £20 billion and it's about 10 years from start to finish. Firstly, that amount of money means that it's almost the only investors are going to be governments, either ours or elsewhere. And secondly, that timescale is too long, because a lot can happen in 10 years. These small-scale, repeatable nuclear power stations can be built quickly. They cost at or around $2 billion. They'll do 25%, maybe more, of the power of the big ones. Rolls-Royce has been a big investor in the tech, and you can put several of them, if you like, on a site which has had either still got a nuclear power station or formerly had a nuclear power station. So therefore it connects straight into the grid.
So
that makes it investable by commercial people.
So
as
nuclear
well as by
is sort of net zero, but it's not renewable. Is that right? Because obviously we have uranium and it's a limited supply, about 80 years worth. So,
but you don't use an awful lot of it.
Yeah.
And also there is more research going into different forms of nuclear power. You know, fusion, we're doing fission at the moment, fusion which puts the atoms together as opposed to fission, which breaks them apart. And
but you still need uranium for both forms.
But different quantities. And what you can't do is you can't say there is a no-risk alternative to renewables. And you can't say we can live our life on renewables. So our choice is nuclear or gas or coal. And of these, probably the most environmentally favourable one, I say probably because no doubt somebody's done a calculation which will come out differently, but I think the practical view is that the most reliable is to build the nuclear, and it's the one that actually will help on net zero at the same time.
But it has a huge environmental impact.
Everything's got environmental.
But the mining of the uranium in the areas and all the surroundings, it could be a problem for the people, the inhabitants. And
but we have had. Don't forget, we've had nuclear power for nearly 50 years now. We have safe nuclear power. We haven't got hoo-ha and uprising about it. It's not as if this is something that's brand new to us. The country understands what it's doing.
But when it goes wrong, and there's a huge impact there. Let's move on to wind, though. So what about wind, then? The government aims to reform planning laws to speed up the approvals of onshore wind farms and then, of course, offshore ones as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
So bringing some form of better streamlined planning into this process, I think, is a good idea. It doesn't necessarily mean you get things where you don't want to get them and people are against them. What it means is that the steps that you have to go through in applying both to build the wind farm, to do whatever's necessary infrastructure and connect into the grid. In fact, you've probably got to build a new grid connection. All that, instead of it going through one stage and then another stage, can be done in a more holistic process. I have a lot of sympathy with people who are concerned about onshore wind, because the reality is that if, in theory, it's cheaper, you can do it quicker, wind doesn't necessarily blow onshore as much or as strongly as it does offshore, but it's something that you can do quickly. If you live close to it, people have had a lot of concerns in the past.
Your head in the noise. I mean, there must be noisy.
There is. There is a rumble. There's a constant rumble.
That sort of.
So
it'd probably turn you mad.
So the two quick questions here are: firstly, can you find places where you can put onshore wind where it's not in the face of local inhabitants? And the second is there some local benefit that you can give to people, like cheaper energy?
Why don't they just do them offshore? You get more wind, and it's more expensive, but
in the end, I think that's probably what. I suspect there might be some moorland, some high moors, that are very remote, which might get onshore. But then you've got a long way from the grid. I think that we'll carry on building offshore.
There should be offshore. Yeah. I think that makes sense.
And whilst you can't do it as quickly, you can get there.
Yeah.
But to pick up your point earlier, of course, that's not environmentally a free lunch either.
No.
Nothing here is easy, is free, is perfect. We have to take a really practical, sensible,
but at least that one,
engineering view.
As opposed to nuclear, is a renewable source, right? So
it's renewable,
going.
But it only, at best, offshore, does the wind blow 60% of the time. So there's a sufficient amount to give electricity. And that 40%, when it doesn't really blow, a lot of that is when that anticyclone, sits cold over Europe and ourselves in February at just the point that you want the power.
What about hydrogen then? Because a lot of people saying that we should be going hydrogen. So, for example, electric cars, why we're not using hydrogen? That would, as long as it's from a clean source,
oh, yes.
Of course.
Yeah, and there is some of that in the energy white paper as well. The proposition being you use power that you don't need because it's, say, at night time or whatever, so surplus wind power or indeed surplus backup power to electrolyse water to give you hydrogen and oxygen. You can collect the hydrogen, and then you've, broadly speaking, got three uses for it. I mean, one, as you say, is an alternative for the current way of operating an internal combustion engine, your car. A second is you replace some of the chemical processes which use what is known as grey hydrogen with this which we all call green hydrogen. I mean,
so grey hydrogen is the one made from fossil fuel, and the green one is the one that's made from a renewable source.
Correct. Of course, hydrogen is colourless, you know, we're just using these brands. And the third is you start to dilute the gas main, which we, of course, as householders use the majority of gas in this country. You start to dilute the gas main with hydrogen. I'm old enough to have been around before we had North Sea gas, predominantly methane, in our pipes. We used to have something called Towns gas and coke gas, and it was a mixture of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, hydrogen, some nitrogen and all that. So what I'm saying is that you can start to put hydrogen into the gas main. You've probably got to put something else as well, probably nitrogen to dilute it a bit, along with your methane, and all of a sudden the actual consumption of gas by ourselves in our heating boilers at home starts to reduce. So you've got those three uses for hydrogen.
Right. So
we've got quite a long way to go on the technology.
Yeah, that's a shame.
We're not there yet.
And now let's go to solar. What about solar energy? Now that is something. Shouldn't every house now be built with solar panels and everything else like that?
Yes, I don't think we do build enough houses with solar panels, frankly.
I don't know why we're not doing it.
And I think we should. And it does cost a bit. That's true, but I see no reason why we should not do so. At the same time, we have to upgrade the grid to what they call a smart grid. Everybody uses the smart this and smart that these days, God knows why, but there we go. The smart grid in this instance means a grid which, instead of just taking power from big power stations, you know, built down the coal fields or the nuclear, old nuclear's at the side of the gas, they can take power from thousands and thousands and thousands of homes if they need to. And the householder can both take electricity when their solar panel isn't working, and they can put electricity back when their solar panel is. But again, because a lot of these decisions have been ducked over the last decade, 12 years or so, if not longer, on the assumption that gas would always be cheap. And whilst it's easy to say the politicians at fault, frankly, so the civil service, who employ loads of fantastic economists and arts graduates and all that sort of thing. Name me how many scientists, let alone any engineers, are within the civil service. They're not there. The advice is taken by politicians who do not notably come from engineering or scientific backgrounds. And the result is a lot of these decisions are being made, I'm going to say too late. They're at least being made now. And I think the criticism of them is wrong, frankly. Can there be more announcements, especially about helping poorer people? Of course there can. But the reality is we've got to just do it, or this country will be in a much worse place in 10 years' time.
Well, Angela, thank you very much for joining me. That's Angela Knight. She's the former Chief Executive of Energy UK. So, on the way, the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should airlines pay more compensation for cancelled flights? There's been widespread cancellations at UK airports today as they gear up for their busiest weekend since the start of the pandemic. And at the moment, airlines have to provide a full refund if they don't run a service. But I want to ask if they should have to go further and pay out more compensation with thousands of passengers in limbo. I'll be joined by the travel editor at The Independent, Simon Calder. But first, let's get some weather.
Hello again, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. A fine, dry weekend for most. Just don't expect it to be too warm. It's going to be fairly chilly, particularly so in the mornings. This is the bigger picture. We're between low and high pressure, with one low to the south that's made for a very wet day over the Channel Islands and some very windy conditions across France. But that's scooting away, and we've got northerly winds still. Not as strong as recent days, but still bringing a chill and still bringing showers over parts of England and Wales. Rain showers primarily, but some hail mixed in. Sleet and snow in the showers over northern Scotland, where it may just turn icy. For most, though, the night becomes dry and clear and cold. Temperatures close to freezing in urban areas. Rural spots will be a touch below. So, yes, a cold, frosty start to the weekend. Still a few showers over northern Scotland, and we'll see cloud increasing across the Western Isles with some more showers coming in here later on. Snow over the Highlands, perhaps down to lower levels. a sprinkling of showers for England and Wales, maybe Northern Ireland, but for most it's a dry and a bright day. But it is still chilly, temperatures below average for the time of year, but the winds are continuing to ease down, so it won't feel quite as cold as the past couple of days. It'll turn quite cold on Saturday night. Again, largely clear skies. Still some wintry showers over northern Scotland, so again, it could be a little icy here, but generally it's a frosty but fine start to Sunday. Plenty of sunshine on offer on Sunday. Some cloud will develop through the day. Certainly for Northern Ireland, it's likely to turn grey with the threat of a bit of patchy rain coming in here by the end of the day. But for most, it'll be dry and fine. Again, a cold start by the afternoon, double figures maybe into the teens across parts of the south where we see some sunshine, and again the winds will be light. However, that cloud coming into Northern Ireland heralds something of a change into next week. Weather fronts bringing cloud and some showers, but also coming up from the south. So after a cold few days, it does look milder next week.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
26 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and with my panel, media personality and writer Christine Hamilton and broadcaster and journalist Petri Hoskin. Now, before the break, we were discussing the government's new energy strategy, and I was asking, is it up to scratch? Well, let's have a look at what you've been saying. Jackie says we need an immediate solution to our energy crisis, and we can do it if we start fracking now. Reopen the fracking sites that were shut down before they are blocked up. Bill says this plan actually solves a lot of problems, but years down the line, what do we do until all these things come into force? And Sophie says, I don't understand why people are so uptight about things like nuclear. It's the way forward. That's what people are saying. What's your view on it?
I entirely agree. I mean, it's whatever's being offered, it's jam tomorrow, and we want some jam today, which is, get fracking, get North Sea oil and gas on board and use the existing fossil fuels that we've got there. We can't wait for 10 years. I'm very interested to hear what Angela had to say.
She's
it is
brilliant.
So refreshing to hear someone who knows what they're talking about. Smaller nuclear reactors are absolutely what we need, and she explained it brilliantly because you can deliver them much more quickly.
If they can, I'm always a bit dubious of any government building plan. I wonder why.
Why.
When you've got HS2 that runs over and then doesn't run anywhere.
Don't get us started on HS2. Well, listen, speaking of HS2 and transport, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should airlines pay more compensation for cancelled flights? Airports are expected to see their busiest weekend since the start of the pandemic as the Easter holidays get into full swing, but there's been chaos as usual at the airports like Heathrow, Birmingham and Manchester. Today alone, more than 100 flights were cancelled. The Chief Executive of a Civil Aviation Authority called on service providers to set out their schedules on a basis that is deliverable given available staff. So I'm asking, should airlines pay more compensation for cancelled flights? I'm joined now by Simon Calder. He's the travel editor at The Independent, who's live from Heathrow. Looks like you're going somewhere nice, Simon. Where are you off to anyway?
Tomorrow I'm off to beautiful Milan Malpensa, if my flight isn't cancelled, like 68 British Airways flights today, another 42 at least EasyJet. So BA, for instance, in the next hour, they've cancelled not just flights to Germany, to Berlin and to Glasgow, but also a holiday flight to Larnaca. So that's going to cheese off, unfortunately, a lot of families. Similarly, EasyJet, they've cancelled flights to, would you believe, Amsterdam and also to Belfast tonight. And there's just shed loads of cancellations tomorrow coming in, particularly on holiday flights to Ibiza, Menorca, Nice on EasyJet. They're going out of Gatwick. But the thing is, the airlines can't really hide from the compensation that they are supposed to be giving. They do pretend that nothing to see here. They do not do exactly what they're supposed to do, which is say, Nana, really sorry, your flight's been cancelled. We owe you a flight on any airline we can find. We owe you cash compensation. And I think it's about time that the Civil Aviation Authority actually thought, well, OK, let's just do something about that, because, frankly, it's not good enough that we've got the airlines cancelling flights wholesale at a time when families need to get away, and they're just saying, well, sorry, staff shortage, COVID. That's not an excuse for everything.
Why are there so many flights cancelled? One or two maybe, but so many. What's their reasoning?
Well, they just say we've got unexpectedly high levels of COVID, and therefore the flight schedules that we were planning to do, we can't do. Actually, people like Manchester Airport are being much more honest. They're saying we let loads of great people go during the pandemic, and we literally haven't got enough staff to cope with the number of passengers we've got. So the boss of the Civil Aviation of Manchester Airports Group, Charlie Cornish, actually this morning came out and said, yeah, we're really sorry. It's going to be horrible. Get to the airport 3 hours ahead, because otherwise we can't guarantee you're going to make your flight. And things are going to get better, Nana. They're going to get better, I think, by about May. But of course, that is little consolation for the families who are desperately wanting to get out now.
They deliberately sort of oversubscribed the flights because then that way, you know, if somebody doesn't show up, they've got people to take their place. Is that something that happens?
No, well, overbooking, actually, when it's done properly, is absolutely fine. There is no problem at all with airlines selling more tickets than there are seats available, although that does, I agree, sound a little odd. But it's not like the theatre or whatever, but generally people do no show. And as long as the airlines do exactly what they are required to do, and that is to hand out money to people to bribe them not to take the flight if the overbooking doesn't work out, that's absolutely fine. But again, it's the airlines not properly coping with the what they are supposed to do, and I'm afraid that we have not had enough of the regulator coming along and saying, right, airlines, you know what you're supposed to do, jolly well do it. We know that you've lost billions of pounds during the COVID pandemic, but the rules still exist, and you've got to treat your passengers properly.
So the airlines must legally compensate people for cancelled flights. Is that just a full refund, or is that something else?
No. Right. OK, so if your flight is cancelled, then you have every right to say to the airline, you've got to get me there. So let's take that Larnaca flight. The airline has to find some way of getting people to their destination. on the same day. And if that means spending hundreds of pounds on a different airline, that's what they have to do. They also have to give you hotel accommodation, they have to give you meals, and they have to pay you cash compensation. That is what they are required to do. If you do decide I'm not going to go, then they give you a full refund on your ticket and they still pay you cash compensation. These rules are designed to incentivise airlines to do the right thing.
Wow, so there's a lot of things they should be doing, they're not. Simon, thank you so much for that. Enjoy your trip to wherever you're going. Larnaca, I think you said. Good luck with that. Take care. They don't want to mess him about. That's Simon Calder. He knows the rules. He's a travel editor at The Independent. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue with our Great British Debate. And I'm asking, should airlines pay more compensation for cancelled flights? You'll hear the thoughts from my panel, media personality and writer Christine Hamilton, and also journalist and broadcaster Petri Hoskin. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. It's 33 minutes past 5. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. The UK is sending a further £100 million worth of high-grade military equipment to Ukraine's armed forces. The Prime Minister says the weapons will include anti-aircraft and anti-tank missiles. The announcement follows a Russian rocket attack which killed at least 50 people, including 5 children in eastern Ukraine. More than 100 others were injured when a railway station in the city of Kramatorsk was targeted. 2 missiles struck as people were trying to evacuate the area. One had the words "for the children" painted on it. The Kremlin denies any involvement in the attack. The Chancellor has admitted he held a US green card while in office. Rishi Sunak says after seeking guidance, it was immediately returned and that he followed all laws and rules and paid taxes in full. He's been under growing pressure after it emerged that his multi-millionaire wife, Akshata Murthy, holds non-dom status, which exempts her from paying tax on foreign income. The man who killed Sabina Nessa has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 36 years after pleading guilty to her murder. Kochi Salamange from Eastbourne attacked the school teacher in a park in southeast London last September. And 3-time Wimbledon champion Boris Becker has been found guilty of 4 charges under the Insolvency Act at Southwark Crown Court. The charges relating to his 2017 bankruptcy included the removal of property, 2 counts of failing to disclose estate, and concealing debt. He's been bailed ahead of sentencing later this month. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Nana will be back in just a moment.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London EC3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. If you've just joined us, welcome on board. And it is back to our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should airlines pay more for compensation for cancelled flights? Now, there's been more than 100 flights cancelled today with long queues at airports, with airlines blaming COVID for staff shortages. Everybody blames COVID, don't they? I mean, it's literally, it doesn't matter, does it? It's always because of COVID. I've been waiting for a dressing table for almost a year now, and every time it's because of COVID, even though there's an endemic now, it's not a pandemic. But anyway, it's OK, it's coming on Monday, apparently. But with many service providers axing flights last minute when passengers have already arrived at the airport, there's been calls to end late notice cancellations. So I'm asking, should airlines pay more for compensation for cancelled flights? And perhaps that whole business of cancelling things at the very last minute needs to be looked into. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Robert says, if you have booked and paid for a hotel and cannot get a refund, then you can be massively out of pocket. And Paul says, the airlines shouldn't have to pay more when it's not their fault. That will put them out of business or force them to raise fares. Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined with media personality and writer Christine Hamilton and also journalist and broadcaster Petri Hoskin. Right, so ladies, have you ever had a flight cancelled when you've been all ready for waiting for it? Have you had a flight that's cancelled?
Listen, nothing, wild horses couldn't drag me. I hate foreign holidays. I spent most of my younger years as a reporter flying all over the world and covering things, so like war zones. So going on holidays is a bit boring and a bit dull in comparison, so I'd much rather stay at home. I hate airports. This for me is like, yeah, that's why I don't go on holiday. I think Simon hit the nail on the head, and both Christine and I nodded at this, is if they hadn't been so short-termist about letting people go, and that's the airlines as well as the airports, laid off, made redundant, all these staff, in a heartbeat, treated them really appallingly, if you remember some of the stories that were happening. You had people in tears saying, I had a job yesterday, I don't have one today. So now they're paying the cost for that. And unfortunately, so are the British public, who are trying to get away on holiday for the first time in 2 years. Shame on them.
But do you
and
think
I think
they
the airlines should pay
though?
For the holiday, not just the flight.
Do you think they would know that, though, that they're not going to have enough planes and whatever it is to do the journey that they're promising, if it's because they have
they're probably moving
staffs?
staff around, aren't they, and trying to fit them all in?
Well, I mean, let's try and be fair to the airlines to start with, just briefly. Well, they've had a torrid time.
Yeah,
of course they have. And it's been very, very
Everybody
difficult,
has,
but
yeah.
everybody has. But it was, they were only too keen to grab the furlough money, etc. Their job is to put on a service, advertise that service, and then deliver that service to the people who signed up for that service. I very, very foolishly, and I can't think why I'm doing it, but I am trying to get to Spain next week. Goodness knows whether I'll make it or not. But I remember the days... Neither of you will. I remember the days when British Airways introduced the shuttle service, which was, I think it was an hourly service from Heathrow to Manchester to Edinburgh, etc. And the theory was, it was like a bus. You just turned up, you said, I want a ticket, and you got on. And if you turned up and you were the only person for that shuttle, the shuttle would fly. That was the promise. We are a million miles away from that. If you increase the compensation that everybody gets, all that will happen, I think, is that airlines will introduce a mandatory insurance that everybody has to take out, and certainly the budget airlines will. As you know, we're flying Ryanair, and as you know, you have to pay for everything by the time you
follow the rules.
By the time you get to the end of the booking process, your flights cost you twice as much.
But isn't that really unfair?
So we'll all pay for it in the end.
But isn't that unfair, Christine? Because you get all these big companies who, if they are given a fine, for example, if we fined the airlines, they go, well, you can fine us, but we're just going to pass it on to the customer. So what are the repercussions for these big companies who can literally treat us any way
like
they
animals.
like? Customer service now is non-existent pretty much across the board, and yet we've got no choice, because if they're fined, They simply pass it
Maybe
on to
there
us.
should be
Pass
some
it
sort
on.
of some sort of quota, in a sense, that if this percentage of their flights are cancelled, then something happens, in a sense. So you can't do something. Or
British Airways, British Rail, or whatever they're called now, they do that, don't they? If your train is X amount of minutes late, then you get compensation.
It's 15, I think, but you have to apply.
You have to apply,
but I
and
think the
it's
government could put something on these companies to say that if you don't meet, like so,
Yeah,
radio,
they'll just
radio
pass
has
it on
certain-
to us,
They will
and that's
pass
the
it on.
point. That's
Yeah,
what
but
I'm
it could
saying.
be a restriction of something, so not necessarily a financial thing. So maybe you won't be allowed to fly to that destination or this.
Oh,
or
yeah,
that.
and lose
I think
your slots or
if they,
something.
you'll lose your. Yeah, there should
Yeah.
be something
That's a
that
good idea.
is not actually a financial loss to them, but is
Or
a
make
real
the managing
inconvenience that could-
directors
yeah.
fly the routes. that they have to.
Now you're talking. Make the boss of Ryanair fly in the baggage compartment of his plane.
You can stand, like I'm sure that's what's going to happen soon in Ryanair.
You're right, frankly. I feel like a blithering idiot trying to go away. I wish to goodness I wasn't trying to do it.
I
but there
can't
we are.
bear this. I'd much rather just sit in my garden and
Well,
play.
I'm a bit like you because I went to boarding school and my parents lived
So
abroad.
you
and
flew all
I
the
flew.
time?
I used to fly 6 or 7,
Airports
8 or 9
are the
times
devil's
a year.
work.
And frankly, I love staying at home now.
Yeah,
I'm
me
actually,
too.
I'm not afraid of flying, but I now understand the gravity of what's happening here. I'm in a metal shoe type thing.
No,
with
I'd just
wings
rather
on
go
the
to the
side going off
dentist.
and
I just think it's just so
I have no
unpleasant.
control of it.
We're going from Bristol, which is a million times better always than
Tiny
either
little,
Heathrow
it's
or
nice,
Gatwick.
yeah.
It's a small
Is
airport.
there even an airport there? I didn't realise.
There is.
Oh, Nana!
I didn't know.
like a
I've
bus
never heard of it.
It's like a bus stop.
It is not like a bus stop. I must defend Bristol Airport. It's our local airport. It's great because it is much, much smaller and you don't get all the crowds. So fingers crossed. But no, I mean, what do you do? How do you hurt the airlines without driving some of them out of business, without putting the cost of airline
but making them responsible.
travel even, but making them responsible?
Without making us
I
have to
like
pay
the
more as
compensation thing, though. I mean, when I was a backpacker many years ago, I was stuck at awful Hawaii airport.
tough.
And was supposed to be flying to New Zealand, and we were called to the desk, my travelling companion and I, and said, "Look, we'll give you $200 if you don't mind not taking
Get
this
off the
flight."
flight.
And we thought, how many cocktails can that buy? So we did that.
Yeah.
But the end of this story is that airline that we were meant to be on was a very famous air incident where the door blew out of the aircraft on the way to New Zealand, killing 16 people.
Gosh, and you should have been
And
on
we
that
should have been
flight.
on it.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
But in those days, our parents had our flight manifesto and had us on that
So they
flight.
thought you won that
But we
flight?
were so drunk. We didn't care. Lying on the back seat of the plane.
How amazing.
That's a true story.
That's very concerning as well.
But that is the only way to do it, is to bribe people to get off the
Get
plane.
off the
Get them
plane.
off,
There'll
yeah.
always be
But
somebody.
it's all right if
whom
you're
it
stuck in
doesn't
Hawaii
matter.
and you're just a backpacker.
Yeah,
So
if you're stuck in
don't
Hawaii
do that.
somewhere nice, that's
Yeah.
worthy. But if you're
But if
stuck
you're going on holiday,
stuck in
nah.
London and Heathrow Airport, it's not so much fun.
Not so much fun.
Or worse still, if you're in Gatwick Airport. Right, today we're asking...
Or Luton.
Should airlines pay more compensation for cancelled flights? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Jerry says airlines should allow airports to increase landing and other charges. This would allow airports to pay decent wages to staff and reduce the waiting times at security. Peter says, Nana, it's a no from me, as prices will just go up. Wendy says, I think it would be fair for airlines to have to pay for all the inconvenience caused by cancelling a flight last minute. That being said, we live in an unfair world, and I think passengers would bear the brunt of extra costs in the end. A lot of people thinking that as well. Thomas says, I've had a flight cancelled last minute before, and the compensation they give you doesn't make up for the amount of money that goes down the drain from the holiday plans that you had to cancel. Interesting stuff. Rob says, unfortunately, this is probably going to get worse. There's estimates that compensation per passenger could drop from £220 to 57 quid because of EU provisions that could be dropped now we've left the EU. Interesting, but that goes both ways. We could probably change the rules so it is more if we really want to. Yes.
I don't get the drift of that at all. We've left the EU. We can make our own rules.
We can
That's
add
the
those
whole
rules to it if it's not working out for us, can't we?
Well, I just don't trust any of it. I just think we lose out in the end.
We
Let's put
do.
it that way.
We will always
the
end up
little people
paying.
lose out in the end.
Yeah, we always end up paying for it, don't we? So
We
it's
do.
not really-
One way or the other.
Either way, and even if it's...
Congestion charge, Even if you don't drive, you pay for it on your delivery. So, yeah, we all
the
pay.
prices always go up. They never come down.
No.
They never come down. Interesting stuff. Well, next I want to take a look at some of the obstacles that are still stopping families here in the UK offering a home for a Ukrainian refugee family. Remember that wonderful scheme that we set up in the UK? As complicated as everything else we do. Well, the Telegraph has reported today that a family offering to host Ukrainian refugees has been barred because their home had bare floorboards. And that's just one of many households across the country which have been prevented from taking those fleeing the conflict in the country because they don't meet strict safety requirements. I mean, there's also even been reports of people being told to drain their ponds if taking in young Ukrainians because they are a safety hazard. Well, I'm still with my panel, media personality and writer Christine Hamilton and journalist and broadcaster Petri Hoskin. So, ladies, what do you make of these requirements? I mean, it's
absolutely mind-boggling, isn't it? These people are fleeing from a war zone. Obviously, you have to take precautions because you don't want people to end up in the wrong hands, as it were. Of course not. But this idea that because you don't have a carpet, you choose to have bare floorboards, that is a reason for turning you down. The government apparently has put a fairly light touch on all these requirements, so it's all down to the individual local councils. Yeah. And don't these little Hitlers just love getting their clipboards out and going round and no. Apparently, if your plugs are too low down on the wall, that's a hazard for children.
But how far?
Well, hang on, wait a minute. Hang on, we can't call them little Hitlers, though. That's not fair. But I know we know what you mean. That's not fair. So we'll take that back. And they're also
take that back. They're using the same list as they would for a foster parent.
Yes.
So, to a foster family, which it seems to be way too extreme for what is being asked of them. My house would fail on I'm moving at the moment, so pretty much everything is in boxes. My plug sockets are in the skirting board.
No.
Which I think is where they're meant to be.
No.
I have glass doors to the back garden.
Oh, God, no. That's, you can't do
but
that.
they are safety glass.
You have to have safety glass if you've got a greenhouse.
But I know, I mean that. They are.
Have you got a greenhouse?
I don't.
No, so you'd be all right.
Do you know, if health and safety and social security came to our house, they would take us into care.
I don't have carpets on the ground floor.
We live in a medieval house and it certainly doesn't live up to all these standards, so we wouldn't be allowed to live there, let alone having... We've got plenty of room for people.
Well, it's interesting that we've put so many different rules in. So basically, if you have bare floorboards... Then you
that's
can't
most
have
of London, isn't it?
Well, that's it. You can't do that.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
They've also warned against stairs that were excessively steep. I don't know who measures whether they're too steep or not. Banisters with gaps with more than 100 millimetres wide. Looped cords or chains for blinds. So, I mean, that's just... If you've got small children, that's common sense. You probably put them higher, but that shouldn't be... Or low windowsills, if you've got low windowsills. Poisonous plants or any damp or mould. Well, you don't want that, but sometimes, you know...
Well, I don't...
We've got damp all over the place. I mean,
poisonous plants
we're
anyway.
Still alive.
I've got a dog.
So
are you allowed to have pets?
I don't know. It depends what kind of dog it is. Probably you might have to wear a muzzle in the house. I don't know what the deal is there.
It is ridiculous. but as a result, how many people have we been able to give accommodation to? I mean, a pitifully small number.
Yeah.
And people are desperately queuing up to help.
But on the other side of it as well, people were complaining about the visa system for Ukrainians in that you'd be trying to find out who these people are and, you know, whether they are legitimate, which I'm sure...
Of course.
Well, the majority would be, but that should be done, shouldn't it? But it's interesting that the heaviest burden of due diligence falls on those who are taking in the refugees.
When you're
I think
checking,
that's interesting.
You know, whether a 4-year-old has got a criminal past or whatever, I mean, maybe some do. I don't know, but you know, I doubt it. And also, not connecting. You know, a 4-year-old will get a visa, but the mum and dad won't, and not connecting those two things. It has been a shambles, and it makes us look mean. It makes us look stupid and
well, it's a bit silly, isn't it? It makes us look, I think, not so much mean, because I think the system is not meant to, you know, what it just shows us is that the way we operate in this country, because this is not just
bureaucratic.
This is not just something that you could apply to this scheme. Look at every single scheme we put together. Eat Out to Help Out, Track and Trace. I mean, the list is endless of these bureaucratic sort of mess-ups that we continue to do in this country.
But globally, it makes us look stupid.
Of course it does, yes.
It is just bureaucratic bollocks.
Excuse me, we'll take that back.
Not say that
I just want to apologise for that, Christine. It's not... You apologise for swearing. It's before the watershed, so we're not allowed to say that.
Some lady who has I think she has a hairdressing place. She has a small flat above her salon. She is, if she wants to take somebody in, she has to take the ceiling down and put fire retardant plaster. Now, she's not going to do that. I mean, there's the cost of all that.
She's already spent £850, by the way, in changing light bulbs or something else in the flat.
Yeah, so it's all. So we do this to ourselves, where we create a bureaucratic nightmare, and in the end, nobody can get anything done, which
like
is
you said,
always the way.
It's fair enough that they're safe. Yeah. A cursory eye. If it's okay for you to live there and you're being generous enough to offer a bedroom to somebody,
then it should
probably
be fine.
Safe enough for them.
Exactly. Right. Well, now it's time for our quick fire debates, the part of the show when we discuss some of the day's other stories. If you've just joined us, then joining me today is author and media personality Christine Hamilton. You've got a new bit to your title there, author as well. We never said that.
She cringes every time you say it.
And journalist and broadcaster Petri Hoskin. Right. First up, one about the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump. Now, he says he regrets not marching on the Capitol on the famous or infamous January the 6th riots. And according to the former president, he would have walked with crowds up to the US government building, but his Secret Service guard wouldn't let him. Christine and Petri, should Trump have said this, or should he apologise for the riots?
I think he's probably right in that his Secret Service wouldn't let him do it. Whether he really wanted to do it at the time is another matter. I mean, no, it would have been madness. He's now trying to appeal to that demographic to try and get their votes next time round, saying he would do it. No, it would have been awful if he'd done it. It would have been even worse.
I'm just loving you calling him Don.
Did I call him
my favourite? Don Trump.
Don Trump.
No, of course he wouldn't have done it. It is absolute nonsense. This is rewriting, his bit of history. He was never going to do it. And if you remember what he was saying at the time was, this is great, and then disappearing and then going, and then we didn't hear from him.
Well, apparently...
So it wasn't... No, it's nonsense.
It is nonsense.
But
apparently he said they wouldn't let him have the National Guard go out there and protect... This is what he said, but that's anyway. Yeah. Well, right, let's have a look at this one. Next, there's fears that shoplifting could increase as more people are plunged into the cost of living crisis, but police could turn a blind eye as they're often so thinly spread, and this is considered low-level crime. Only 16.8% of shoplifting offences reported to the police, which result in a charge, which is nearly half the rate of 30.8% years ago. So, Christine and Petri, how can we keep rates of shoplifting down? What do you think?
It's very difficult. I mean, it's theft, it's stealing, it's a crime. But when you are desperate and you have got small children to feed and you cannot afford it, then something in the shop, low-level fruit, you can understand why people fall prey to it. Of course, the police should take every crime seriously, but they haven't got the resources. So, in a way, what is the point in pursuing somebody who's stolen a loaf of bread?
And Petri, briefly.
But we've got to remember the shopkeepers in all of this. A lot of them small independent shops who are losing lots of money to shoplifters.
They're the ones who can't afford security.
Exactly.
Well, let's do my last one. Let's do my and finally, because residents of a town in South Wales have been left devastated after a pair of feisty geese have been banned from their home on a canal towpath. Now, the local residents who fed them said that they were loved by all, but the council received complaints from the members of the public who said the birds attacked them and that they were taken away by pest control. Well, do you think that this is right to get rid of these aggressive
animals? Geese are terrifying, and they used to be used in the olden days as like dogs.
Really?
Yeah, they used to be used. You had a flock of geese on your massive front lawn, and they would be used as attack dogs, basically, to keep people away. So they are scary. Have you been chased by a goose?
Never. I don't want to be. Christine, very briefly, for about 10 seconds.
Oh, well, without knowing a few more details, I honestly don't know whether that's just heavy-handed rubbish. Or whether it's sensible.
Let's see what paper it is in the
I don't know is the answer.
Right. Chased by a goose and come back to me.
So on today's show, we've been asking, should people with non-dom status pay UK tax on all their income? And according to our Twitter poll, 47% of you said yes, 53% of you said no. Wonderful. Great stuff. We're going to say thank you so much to my panel. Media personality Christine Hamilton. Thank you, Christine. And journalist and broadcaster Petri Hoskin for joining me today. And thank you at home for your company. I'll be back tomorrow at 4. I'll leave you with the weather.
Hello again, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. A fine, dry weekend for most. Just don't expect it to be too warm. It's going to be fairly chilly, particularly so in the mornings. This is the bigger picture. We're between low and high pressure, with one low to the south that's made for a very wet day over the Channel Islands and some very windy conditions across France. But that's scooting away, and we've got northerly winds still. Not as strong as recent days, but still bringing a chill and still bringing showers over parts of England and Wales. Rain showers primarily, but some hail mixed in. Sleet and snow in the showers over northern Scotland, where it may just turn icy. For most, though, the night becomes dry and clear and cold. Temperatures close to freezing in urban areas. Rural spots will be a touch below. So, yes, a cold, frosty start to the weekend. Still a few showers over northern Scotland, and we'll see cloud increasing across the Western Isles, with some more showers coming in here later on. Snow over the Highlands, perhaps down to lower levels. A sprinkling of showers for England and Wales, maybe Northern Ireland, but for most it's a dry and a bright day. But it is still chilly, temperatures below average for the time of year, but the winds are continuing to ease down, so it won't feel quite as cold as the past couple of days. It'll turn quite cold on Saturday nights. Again, largely clear skies. Still some wintry showers over northern Scotland, so again, it could be a little icy here, but generally it's a frosty but fine start to Sunday. Plenty of sunshine on offer on Sunday. Some cloud will develop through the day. Certainly for Northern Ireland, it's likely to turn grey, with the threat of a bit of patchy rain coming in here by the end of the day. But for most, it'll be dry and fine. Again, a cold start by the afternoon, double figures maybe into the teens across parts of the south where we see some sunshine, and again the winds will be light. However, that cloud coming into Northern Ireland heralds something of a change into next week. Weather fronts bringing cloud and some showers, but also coming up from the south. So after a cold few days, it does look milder next week.
Tomorrow from 10 a.m, get set for a GB News exclusive interview with Prime Minister Boris Johnson as two of his most rebellious MPs put him on the spot. Brexit, COVID, and now the reality of war. How does the Prime Minister look back on the past 2 years? And what can he say about having been so close to death?
I then had a pretty groggy night and went down even lower.
An exclusive interview with Prime Minister Boris Johnson tomorrow from 10 a.m. on GB News.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid